Hello, friends. It's me, Chloe Archer, here again. And before we get into this episode, I wanted to give a little bit of an update on things going on with me. My first full length novel in my new Monsters Hollow series just came out September 22nd. It's called The Orc and the Manny, a cozy monster romance. If that sounds like your jam, then be sure to go and pick it up. It is available in ebook on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited, as well as print on Amazon. I also have the prequel novella up, The Bogeyman and the School Teacher, and the other novella, The Demon and the Librarian, is part of the limited time only Fated Mates charity anthology, which will be going down at the end of October. So there's only a couple weeks left to buy or read a copy of this amazing anthology. All the proceeds go to very worthwhile causes, the ACLU's Drag Defense Fund and the Transgender Legal and Education Fund. So make sure to snag your copy while you can. Once that goes down, however, I will be putting The Demon and the Librarian up on Amazon solo. And if you want to purchase a copy there and support me, that would be amazing. I will have more info on that soon. And I also have some exciting news about an upcoming Christmas novel, but I'm going to wait and talk a little bit about that with my guest today, who is also connected to this exciting project. So stay tuned for another wonderful episode of Tea, Tentacles, and Talk. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Tea, Tentacles, and Talk, cozy conversations about LGBTQ plus romance. I'm your host, Chloe Archer, and I write sci-fi and paranormal rom-coms with plenty of heat, geekery, and zany shenanigans. And today I am joined by my very special guest, KL Cat Hiers. Welcome to the show. Let me go ahead and tell people a little bit about you. KL Cat Hiers is an embalmer, restorative artist, and queer writer. Licensed in both funeral directing and funeral service, they worked in the death industry for nearly a decade. Their first love was always telling stories, and they have been writing for over 20 years, penning their very first book at just 8 years old. Publishers generally do not accept manuscripts in Hello Kitty notebooks, however, but they never gave up. They now enjoy writing professionally, focusing on spinning tales of sultry passion, exotic worlds, and emotional journeys. They live in Zebulon, North Carolina with their family, including their children, some of whom have paws and a few that only pretend to because they think it's cute. Welcome, Kat. So glad to have you on the show. As most of my guests know, because this is tea and talk, I always encourage guests to bring a little beverage. And this morning, my dogs are making a lot of noise this morning. But this morning, I went heavy duty with coffee. I have a fantastic Nespresso machine,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, so it's their like pumpkin, their version of kind of like a pumpkin spice type of
Hmm.
espresso. It's quite nice. I love coffee, but I can't drink it every day because middle age apparently told me, oh, your stomach does not like that every day.
Oh,
So that very unfortunate. So often I'm drinking tea, but today I needed a little bit of an extra dose. I don't know about other folks. And this time of year I have like major like allergies when like all the leaves start falling off the trees. I've always been super
hmm.
allergic to them. So sinus headache season for me, but coffee helps at least a little bit. Do you have something to drink with you today?
I do actually. I have this horrible energy drink that my brother left for me. I'm an energy drink person. I like
Oh,
coffee
really?
flavored
Okay.
things, but I
Oh.
can't drink actual coffee because the
Oh.
stomach and everything. So I
Mm,
usually do energy drinks is usually how I
okay.
get my caffeine and get going.
Nice. Yeah, I can't function without the caffeine. It's got to be tea
Gotta
or
have it.
something. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, many of our guests or people who, are tuning in are always interested in sort of learning more about authors and how they kind of got started on their journey. So of course, your bio indicates you've been writing for a really long time, and that, this has clearly been a passion of yours. But can you kind of tell us a little bit about how you say transitioned from working in the death industry into actually writing, or are you kind of keeping a foot in both realms now, or are you full time? Where are you at?
I am actually writing full time. I'm a script
Awesome.
writer and researcher for an adult film company.
Ooh.
And so I write a lot. I unfortunately I had lost my job at the funeral home following an injury. And so after being an embalmer for 9 years, I could no longer continue to work there.
Mm,
And at the time, I had already been published. I'd already published my first book by then. And I got the idea to, well, why not just go into writing full time?
yeah.
And that was pretty much just the transition was almost out of necessity because it was like, hey, I need a job, I got to do something.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to get this position with the film company, so I do that, and then I write my own books, and I'm just a writing crazy person all the time.
That's awesome though. I mean, that's like living the dream in many
Yeah.
respects, right? I was telling a friend the other day, because I have a lot of writer friends and some in different areas, nonfiction, fiction, other stuff. And we were kind of
Mhm.
talking, and I was like, weirdly, when I was a kid, my like idea of what it meant to like be a writer was weirdly informed by watching at probably far too young an age Stephen King's Misery. And,
Oh no.
and like the opening sequence of that film, I don't know if you've seen it or remember it,
Oh
but
yeah.
like, James Caan's character is like, in this beautiful like log cabin in the woods, and he's like typing on
Hmm.
a typewriter, and he like finishes and he like puts down the last page, the end, pours himself some champagne, has like a cigar or something, right? And
Yeah.
he puts the manuscript in a satchel, leather satchel, and he drives down the mountain because he's done working at his like special little retreat where he's written his latest masterpiece, and then things
Hmm.
very awry. But like my vision of like, oh wow, that would be really nice. The reality is not that.
No, no.
The
A
reality
lot
is,
more
yeah,
pajamas and desperation and crying. A little bit
right.
more.
Yes, and like weird like dreams, waking up with ideas in the middle of the night, like
Mhm.
frantic trying to like scribble stuff down. I mean, it's very different. I mean, I still love it, but not exactly what the Hollywood image projected for
No.
me as a child in that movie. Oh, my dog Jasper wants to come and join us. Hello, bud. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah,
Hey, buddy.
he likes to have his 15 seconds of fame here. Um,
Mhm.
so can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, maybe your writing process, since you are working on several different types of writing when it comes to like actually getting into the headspace for fiction writing? Do you have like a specific place and time you like to write? Do you have things you need to kind of make that happen? Um, how does your sort of process work for you as a
I'm
writer?
definitely a plotter. I outline
Mm.
everything. Like when I was working on Sucker for Love, that whole series, by the time I finished the first book, I already had the entire outline for the other eight already done with
Oh,
detailed
wow.
scenes and synopses. Like I'm a little tiny bit compulsive when it comes to planning.
Mm.
I learned a long time ago because I've been writing for a million years at this point.
Right.
Something I had a lot of trouble with, I would have great idea for a story, and as I'm writing, I would get five more ideas, and suddenly I'm so far from the main thread of whatever I was trying to do because I have all these extra scenes. They're going to go to a bar, they're going to
Yeah.
adopt a dog, whatever. And I realized for me to outline, to make sure I have something to follow and to stay on track,
Mm.
to make sure like I know this is the end, this is what you're working toward, and some of the other stuff you're gonna have to cut out and you're gonna have to stop. Otherwise, it's just gonna be 100,000 words of nonsense.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think that's one of the cool things I've really learned from talking to so many other authors is that everybody has a really different kind of way that they write.
Mhm.
Some people are really like, yeah, like plotters and they have to be really organized to keep things on track. And then other people tend to like veer more toward discovery-based writing and stuff along those lines. So it's always really fascinating to kind of hear from people. But I think with probably like the level of productivity you have and all the projects that you're working on, you'd have to kind of know where you're going or else you'd
Yeah.
potentially not make those deadlines and all of that kind of stuff. Do you find that like one of the problems that I struggle with, I'm not much of a plotter actually. I tend to kind of like, I know the characters, the main characters, and I know how the story starts and I know where it's going to end. And I may know some like milestones along the way, but I don't know when or how they're going to get to any of them kind of thing. And so for me, part of what I like about that is that I like to discover along with the character, sort of like along the way. Oh, like I didn't know that was going to happen. Do you find it all like when you plot out in such detail? Does it sort of do you lose any of your excitement for the story? Because that tends to happen for me. Or do you find that like you're just really eager to get in there and flesh out the details?
I'm definitely excited. I whatever the ending is, like whatever that big reveal, whether it's a happy ending or maybe it's the who done it of a mystery,
Mhm.
that's always the part I'm the most excited to get to, and working toward that is a lot of fun. And I will leave myself in some of my outlines, especially for my bigger books, a couple chapters here and there just in case, as I'm writing I might get a really fun idea, especially when I'm
Mhm.
working with my co-author Mazara Scout.
Yeah.
The two of us, they have a wild, awesome imagination, and we'll be halfway through a chapter and they'll be like, "Hey, let's do this. What about this?" And it's so especially when I'm working with them, I will leave some buffer space, like a couple extra chapters to fill in, because I know, especially working with them, we're going to come up with something extra and something that's not
Right.
already on the outline.
Wow, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, I want to know more about your experience co-writing. I haven't done that yet, and I'm not sure if I will. I'm a tiny bit of a control freak about certain things. And so I feel like, oh, I'd have to find somebody who could compliment me well in that
Yeah.
regard. But I not too long ago, I interviewed Macy Blake and Charlie Cochet, who are writing together their Shifter Scoundrel series, and they were kind of talking about
Mm-hmm.
their experiences co-writing together and like the fact that it really helps them that they're best friends and
Yeah.
they know each other really well and they can also sort of call bullshit on each other when they need to and they each have different kind of strengths that balance one another out. So kind of how did you I guess get started co-writing with Mazarus and like what do you like? How does your co-writing work? Like, co-writers are often really different. Do you like say, okay, I'm going to do this character POV, you're going to do that character POV? Or do you kind of have a more like, we're going to co-write every single chapter together? Do you use Google Doc? I mean, like, there's so many questions with this. Like, tell me a little bit about like how you started
Okay.
co-writing and how it works, like at a sort of basic level.
Yeah. I will say, everyone I've explained this to, has told me we're insane because apparently no one else really writes
Love it.
this way. But I've known Moz for years and years and years. They're my absolute best friend. They're my sunshine. I love them to pieces. I cannot imagine co-writing with anyone else. So I would definitely say you have to find someone who will compliment you and who does work well for
Yeah.
you. And then especially if you're, a control freak, someone who can be willing to deal with you too and have that patience.
Right.
But the way that we do it, have you ever seen or heard of like old text-based RPGs, like where people will actually write out a character and take turns writing a scene? It's almost, there's different ways to do it, but the way that Maz and I do, we typically pick a character. I'll have one MC, they'll have the other one, and we go sort of paragraph by paragraph, taking turns writing it, and then I edit it together because I only do third. I don't do first person POV,
Ah.
and the entire book will be third from one of our characters' point of view.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, I mean, do you have to find times where you can co-write segments together? Like, oh, are you free at noon or whatever? Like, or is it like you write a paragraph and then you're like, pass, and then like you wait until they write their paragraph and like back to you, or like how does that work?
Yeah, we actually do a lot of it on Facebook Messenger of all things. We just go back and forth.
Wow.
We use Discord too, and then
Mm,
I will copy whatever we're working on and put it into like a Google Doc and then just
yeah.
edit it all together. So then it's just seamless and it comes across like it's just one person, like one POV
Yeah.
has been written.
Wow. Yeah, I
Told
mean
you
that's
it was
pretty
insane.
wild. Like yeah. I mean, I think it's really cool. Like again, I feel like there is never any just like one way you've got to do things. Like
Yeah.
I think that, it's so wonderful to hear so many different approaches that people take because then you can kind of try all different kinds of things until you find one that works for you, right? Uh
Yeah.
but so like what kind of challenges though have you encountered? So I'm sure it helps a lot that Mazurus is also like your bestie and everything like that. But that doesn't mean that there aren't sometimes challenges in working together with someone you really care about, right?
Mhm.
Like so what kinds of things have you found challenging sometimes in co-writing?
Um, the main one for me, again, being the control freak and having this need, here's our outline, here's the expected word count, because I will actually take it to a point where each chapter needs to be, X number of words just for a sense of flow. And yes, I'm a little insane because I want them all to be about the same, because it always bothered me when I did
Oh,
read that, this chapter is only 2,000 words and suddenly this one is 5,000. And that kind of inconsistency threw me off sometimes as a reader. And
mm,
I just, for me, for my own sake, I wanted everything the same. And so we'll be getting close to the end of a chapter and I have to kind of cut off whatever it is we're doing just in case it's starting to run a little too close to that maximum word count that I want. But I
oh,
mean, it's not bad. I mean, before Maz and I actually started writing books together, like I said, we did RP, we did all of the little like role
mhm.
playing games and stuff together. So we already had a pretty good history of writing lots of crazy stuff together.
Yeah. So, do you do the same thing in terms of the outlining process? Do you guys kind of just like brainstorm back and forth
Yeah.
over Messenger, Discord? Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the other thing that I would feel like if you were kind of trying to write something with somebody, what if you had different ideas about where the story should go or the characters should go and you can't like reach a compromise?
That
um
hasn't happened yet.
Oh,
So,
that's
I mean, we're
good.
pretty lucky that Maz and I also kind of think the same way and like the same sort of,
Mhm.
fluffy, happy endings. Even if we're horrible to the characters first, they will eventually get a happy ending. So,
Right, right. So that kind of like raises another question for me. Okay, you going down, buddy? Okay, so that kind of like opens up another question that I'm interested in, which is so when you're writing your solo projects, do you have other people? They could be readers, they could be writers, they could just be general friends that you kind of like. Do you ever bounce ideas off of them when you're trying to like figure out what you're doing with a story, or do you operate really solo with that?
Sometimes if I, and this doesn't happen often because, again, I plot so much, but if I'm stuck on something or looking for, an idea, like I need a little bit of filler or something, I mean, there's a couple of author friends that I'm close to, like Amanda Mavison. I
Yeah.
might send her a message and be like, hey, I don't know what to do here. But, for the most part, I mean, that's why I like planning, because I don't run into, say, some of the common pitfalls that a lot of writers who don't do, because I already know my ending. I already know, at
Right.
least 90% of what I want to do.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I mean, writing can be often really solitary, right?
Mhm.
And I have found a lot of benefit for things like accountability, and feedback and stuff, but like that by having a kind of a group of like a writing circle almost with some fellow
Mhm.
authors. We have a Discord channel, and like we do at like daily evening sprints, writing sprints together. We sometimes
Mhm.
kind of like stream certain types of like craft or business related video workshops that we'll like watch and discuss together. And a number of them beta read for me and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I also have, and I will brainstorm with them sometimes for certain things. And, we give each other kind of ideas that can kind of sort of, if we're stuck, can kind of unstuck this where we're at and get
Mhm.
the ball rolling again. But I also have like an alpha reader who is like my bestie from grad school, who is not a writer, but is an avid reader in the genre. And like, we will often just like, I'll have a conversation with her, and I will, my ideas will kind of solidify just from talking to her,
Mhm.
because kind of like you and Maz were on a similar sort of wavelength. So,
Yeah.
I think if for folks who are watching, if you're kind of a new or aspiring author, I think it's important to kind of remember that many of us don't write entirely alone, that we do have communities and people that we can sometimes call on to kind of help us when we get stuck or when we
Mhm.
need to talk through ideas. And so it's really good to try to be proactive in informing those if you don't already have a kind of network. And, there are lots of ways you can go ahead and do that. But just sort of at least joining some of the author groups on Facebook and other things can help you get
Yeah.
started. But I think another way, of course, is also sometimes getting involved if you have an opportunity in a kind of collaboration, right?
Mhm.
And so, you and I actually have sort of met largely through working on a collaboration together.
Yeah.
And like, I've met Amanda that way, and all of that. And now we're gonna be on a panel together at GRL, the Gay Rumlet retreat,
Mhm.
in like a week.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a tentacle themed panel, which I'm super excited about. And so, this is my opportunity on the podcast to kind of announce that we have a multi-author collaboration series coming out starting on Black Friday, called Tinsel and Tentacles. And it's all winter holiday themed tentacle romances. And and Kat and I both have books in the collaboration. It's going to be some novels, some novellas, and so make sure to check that out on Amazon. Um, but the stuff that we're here to talk a little bit more about today intersect more with the magical month of October,
Mm.
um, the month of Halloween, which to me is like a month-long celebration of goodness. Halloween is like my favorite
Oh,
holiday. It
same.
always has been, right? And I know like we discovered recently we're both fans of horror movies. And so, oh, I love it. Oh, that's so great.
That's what I was wearing.
Yes, I mean, I love the old classic Universal monster movies, but also
Oh yeah.
like, the 70s, like iconic postmodern horror, like Toby Hooper, John Carpenter,
Hmm.
Wes Craven, George Romero,
All
I
the
mean,
greats. Yeah.
right? I mean, sadly, Carpenter's the only one who's still alive. Like,
Yeah.
all the
Everybody else
others
is
passed
dead.
away, but yeah. Um, but you have two amazing books we're going to talk about, and I'm just so excited to hear more about them. So, one of them is called 13 Days of Monster Fucking, Volume
Mhm.
3, which is that's
Great.
already epic in and of itself. And the other one is 13 Days of Monsters Making Love. And I just adore this. So tell me more about these two books, like what they're all about, what readers can kind of look forward to, and why you wanted to do them.
Yeah, the very first 13 days of monster fucking started however many 3 years ago now, where
Mm.
I got the idea. I love Halloween. I wanted to do something fun, and I actually started looking up two-sentence horror stories. And I got
Ooh,
the idea to use those as a prompt for a romance or erotic story.
love it.
And it was a mix of very, very dark stories. Some of them are a little bit
Mm.
lighter, a little bit fluffier. And
Mm.
so that first book, that first volume, was a little bit of a mixed bag. Some people
Oh,
loved it.
okay.
People like the dark, scary monster. Some people just want the kind of fluffy ones. So for the
Mm.
next year, I got the idea that I was going to separate them. I
Mm.
was going to actually make sure that the monster fucking was only going to be the dark, scary, this is going to smash words because Amazon's going to ban me, bad monsters. And then Monsters Making Love was going to be all the fluffy, sweet ones.
Yeah.
Last year, I had worked on 8 Days of Monstrous Pride. I think it was last year, which was 8 short stories of nice, sweet monsters, and I didn't get around to it. And by the
Mm.
time volume 2 came around, I got Mazarus to write with me, and we wrote I think a little under half of those stories together, and then some of them I still do solo. And then with this one, with volume 3, we've written almost all of them together, and we
Mm.
wrote all of the ones for 13 Days of Monsters Making Love, I think, except for 2 that I did on my own. And it's been a lot of fun because, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody isn't going to like the same thing. And
Sure.
it's nice to be able to have, here's the, your nice, happy, sweet monsters, no content warnings. Or if you like darker ones, here you go. And if you like both, hey, awesome. You've got 2. And I am so excited to finally have this double release because I've been planning it since last year. Just nothing
Wow.
fell into place the way I wanted it to. But so yeah, me and Maz cannot wait to get both of these out into the world.
That's amazing. Now, are they both going to be on Smashwords?
No, they're actually this is sort of a sidebar. I was unpublished from Smashwords.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they sent me a little system notification that Moz didn't have an author account on Smashwords, which you can't make a new account on Smashwords right now. They closed that back in the spring. And
Oh.
so I had to go through all these hoops to turn my account into a publisher, create ghost accounts for me and Moz just to add us to the books. And then when they got resubmitted to the premium catalog, I got this little nasty gram saying that I had to unpublish all the 13 days books, including the pre-order for volume 3,
Oh.
because of I don't even know if we'll be able to say this on YouTube, but because of snuff content.
Oh, what?
And oh yeah, I argued with them, of course, because
Yeah.
no, these books are dark. They're not that dark. And
Yeah.
they replied with literal screenshots. One of them I remember specifically because this is how stupid it was. It was one of my content warnings from 13 Days, Volume 1.
Hmm.
For body horror for a hanging limb, because in that story the creature is a Frankenstein style monster and his arm
Yeah.
falls off just about after he's rescued the other MC, and so they got to sew him back together, and I just included a content warning for that just in
Yeah.
case it
Yeah.
might, bother someone. Well, they said that was mutilation. Oh yeah.
Do they know the
I,
horror genre at all?
I know, right? So I tried to appeal. I was given no other recourse. And so I had to unpublish everything from Smashwords. I closed my account. You'll be able to find all of the 13 Days of Monster Fucking now through my Shopify store, which you
Cool.
can find through my website, because they don't
Okay.
care. And then 13 Days of Monsters Making Love will be on Amazon.
Okay. Well, I will include links for both of those in the show notes.
Thank
And
you.
I mean, I think there's so much of this nonsense going on where like there are just these people behind the scenes who like are making willy-nilly decisions about, I
Oh,
mean, this
yeah.
is on the Zon as well, with like accounts being shut
Mhm.
down or people being locked
Yeah.
out and stuff like that. I mean, it's not surprising. I do think that there's an important future in like direct sales for many of us who are indie self-pubbed authors, because these huge conglomerates are just like, they don't care about us and they don't have
No,
our interests, they don't factor in at all. And yeah, I mean, partly just to maintain livelihoods and the security of our
exactly.
content, yeah, we're having to shift this way. And it's unfortunate because I know a lot of readers really love subscription services like KU and all of that kind of stuff, but it's becoming increasingly untenable for a lot of authors now that the payments just keep going down. There's all kinds
Yeah.
of problems, right? But yeah, but when you get flagged for content that Amazon kind of weirdly targets some stuff and not others, right? Where
Mhm.
it's like,
And
okay, I
now
want to be
Smashwords, apparently.
right in that. Yeah. So I mean, let's hope, fingers crossed, that Shopify doesn't care what you put up there. Right? But like,
Yeah.
yeah, wow.
That's
Well,
why I said good.
yeah. Well, at some point I'll definitely, I'll have to have you back on the show once you've had some more experience doing direct sales, because I'd love to hear kind of more about kind of like the pros and cons, the things you've learned as you get deeper into it.
Yeah.
The advice you have for other authors looking to get into it. I'm thinking about it at some point, but I'm still pretty new, and so my backlist is kind of small. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I'll wait until my backlist gets a little bigger. So there's like more
Mhm.
than like half a page for people to like look at
Yeah.
on the store, right? But yeah, so oh my gosh. Well, I love this idea. I think of kind of like dividing up the stories. Because I will admit I'm sort of like, I don't know. I guess I'm probably like this a little bit with food too, where I'm like, oh, I like fresh coconut, but I don't like dried coconut. Right? Well, I like horror movies, but when it comes to romance, I tend to not like horror romance
Yeah.
combined, right? So I tend to like veer more toward the fluffy side of things. But I totally understand why like other people like the darker stuff. And I found it really interesting that, yeah, there is this like, often there's a divide. People are like in one camp or the other. And then there's this other subset who are like anything
Yeah.
monster, dark, fluffy, whatever, give it to me. And so I love that, this is a way to kind of have a little bit of everything for everybody, right?
Mhm.
So like if you want both, double the pleasure, double the fun, just get both copies. And like
Yeah.
if you only want one, then you know where to go for that,
Yeah.
right? So that's really exciting. Well, okay, so I also love the covers of these books. So I totally want to know. Tell me, who did your covers and kind of what was the design process like?
They were both done by Amanda Mavison. She's actually done all of my covers
Oh my
for the
God.
13 Days series. And then the actual logo for Monsters Making Love, the little heart with the wings,
Yeah.
was originally designed by Mazarus.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I am just like so envious of people who have like artistic talent. I've talked about this before, but like I desperately wanted to be able to like draw and do that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I have
Mm.
no
I
talent for
no.
that. And so like I'm amazed. Well, and like Amanda is so cool and she's been a guest on the show as well. But like I mean, I have to like bow down to her, marketing
Oh,
like
yeah.
mojo because I'm just like, how did you do this amazing TikTok video thing? Like, and this graphic that you're doing to promote, like, I'm like, okay, teach me your wise ways. I will trade like some blurb writing or something like
There
that.
you go.
Yeah, that's tends to be something I'm fairly decent at. Is writing blurbs for things. And I'm like the weirdo of who actually enjoys doing that because apparently this is something that most writers are like, oh, dread about having to do the blurb. And I'm like, blurb, woo, this is fun. So I'm kind of a weirdo when it comes to that. But no, that's so cool. Well, I mean, I love I'm still learning about the whole like cover design process, and
Yeah.
I've worked pretty exclusively with Natasha Snow so far because I just
Mhm.
love her stuff and she's so talented. But I always love hearing from other people like how they kind of get involved in this and knowing other authors who are also gifted in this area. I mean, I'm sure that also kind of like saves on cost because cover design is often really expensive.
Yeah.
So,
It's very, very expensive.
yes. I mean, it can be very worthwhile. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
the thing, to emphasize to newbies who are getting involved in this is that, your cover is really important. And if you're gonna kind of invest any kind of money, you want to think about your cover and your editing essentially as you're getting started. Because the cover is often what lures people in to read a blurb and then decide if they're gonna buy and stuff like that. Yeah, Amanda and I talked a little bit about, oh my God, the breathtaking cover of her last courtesan,
Oh my God.
right? And
Yes.
I was just because like
Gorgeous.
every time I would see that pop up in my Facebook feed or whatever, I'd have to stop and I'd be like, damn, that's good.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm so pleased that it's doing so well for her. And I have a
Hmm.
feeling that, these awesome covers on the 13 days of monsters getting it on in whatever fashion are going to do super well as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of um a little bit about sort of like you as an author. And I often ask sort of, so we've got a little bit of a sense of some of the kinds of things you like to write, right?
Mhm.
But do your reading preferences kind of align with what you write, or do you read in areas that you don't write?
Um, I will preface this by saying I'm a terrible reader, very, very
Oh,
terrible. I
how so?
used to read just obsessively when I was a kid,
Hmm.
and then as I got older, if I had free time, I would rather be writing than
Mm,
reading.
mm,
And so these days, there are a couple authors I beta read for. So I still read a lot of MM
mhm,
from,
mhm.
certain specific people that I'm lucky enough to be able to beta read for.
Right.
And then I'm trying to think of the last book I actually, other than kids' books, for my little kiddos. It was probably Wrestling Reality. It was the autobiography of Chris Canyon, who was a wrestler.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I actually don't tend to read a lot of nonfiction. I'm more of a fiction reader in
Yeah.
general, but I do want to read Elvira's biography.
Yes, yes.
I'm forgetting the name of the actress who plays Elvira, but
Cassandra Peterson.
thank you. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Just blanking on that this morning. But anyway, but she's a fascinating figure. And I remember growing
Mhm.
up with like the Elvira presents sort of stuff, as a
Oh
kid.
yeah.
And like, yeah, so and the fact that, she's come out late in life as a
Hmm.
lesbian and everything, I just
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I've gotta read this. So that's on my
Yeah.
like TBR pile. But I have found, becoming a published author because I also have a full-time day job, like, so I'm kind of
Yeah.
juggling the two. My reading time has really like shrunk
Yeah.
a lot. And, there's a lot of stuff I want to read, and I kind of don't have time if I want to keep making progress on the writing. So that was one thing I didn't kind of anticipate so much as I, got started in writing, is that
Yeah.
sometimes your reading time can go down, particularly if like if you have a full-time day job and you're writing, and if you've got other, like, you've got kids, you've got other types of like demands on your time that make it really hard to kind of fit that in.
Oh
um
yeah.
yeah. So you and I are both going to a GRL, Gay
Yeah.
Rom Lit. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of what you're going to be involved in while you're there, what readers who might be attending can look forward to?
Yeah, the I do have my schedule posted, which I do not
Awesome.
have memorized, but I believe on Wednesday, Amanda, Mavison, and I are going to be passing out our pre-orders over at the hotel
Oh,
bar. Then there are the lounges, which are more of a like an informal kind of little meet and greet where you can come meet me and get some swag. And
nice.
then, of course, our panel that we're going to be
Yay.
having. I'm so excited. Tentacles.
I
Tentacles.
know. Yes, to my knowledge, GRL has not had a tentacle themed panel before.
Oh, we get to be
Um,
the first.
we do, yes. Because I have been attending. I'm really excited about GRL this year because this is the first time I'm actually attending officially as an author. I
Mhm.
have been going as a reader since like Chicago, which I think was 2014.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so almost 10 years. It took me a while to to get where I wanted to be on this. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. But when we started talking about trying to do a panel together, I was like, they have not ever done a tentacle themed, like they've had paranormal type
Yeah.
ones before, but not one specifically tentacle themed. And since there were the four of us, so it's going to be me, Kat, Amanda Mavison, and Megan Maslow. And we're all part of the Tinsel and Tentacles collaboration together. And so it's gonna be super fun. But yeah, I tend to like to do the thing somebody hasn't done before, right? I don't
Mhm.
know if you follow Becca Syme at all, but like she's been doing this thing about like, oh, what's your author type, right? And like one of the categories is like trailblazer, right? Where you like to kind of like make your own. I have the tendency to want to do that. I don't know why, but I'm like, they haven't done tentacles. We are going to do it, by golly. But no, it's gonna be fun. So if you are watching and you're planning to attend GRL, please make sure to check out the author lounges and to make sure to check out our panel, as well as loads of other awesome panels that are going to be happening at GRL. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so I usually ask my guests some kind of like fun question here. So can you tell me, do you have a favorite line from a movie?
I do, and I quote it all the time. No one ever
Ooh.
knows where it's from, and it's one of my favorites. It's "Nobody's home. The Stanleys have all been arrested for peddling dope. Go away." That is from
That's
the Man Who Came to Dinner in 1941. That is Monty Woolley, who was a closeted queer actor for
mm,
pretty much all of his life. He plays a real jerkwad radio personality. This is the 40s, so he was a
yeah,
great
yeah.
orator and speaker, and he ends up sort of taking over this poor family's house and making their lives a living hell and threatening to sue them. And
Mm,
I don't know why that one line is always stuck in my head, but if someone knocks at my door, that's my response is, you have to go away. The
I
Stanleys aren't
love
here. They've all been arrested for peddling dope. That just always stuck in my head.
I mean, I think that's also pretty remarkable for like the 1940s to get that past the Hays Code censors, because usually you couldn't
Mhm.
make direct references to some of that kind of stuff in
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. What year did the Hays Code start?
1930, 33,
Something.
34.
Okay. Yeah, like for the time, it's pretty raunchy. The humor in this movie is and Monty Woolley is just a fantastic actor and just has this wicked bite, if he if he would insult you, you'd either be honored or cry or both. And
Right.
just some of the things he gets away with in this movie are just like, this is like 1941. How in the world?
Right. That's wild. I mean, the funny thing is, I'm also a big film nerd, and I have to admit I haven't seen this one. But like, I was that weirdo in high school who like watched Turner Classic Movies
Oh
all the
yeah.
time, right? And like none
Hmm.
of my peers even knew what that was, right?
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay. But yeah, but the censors for enforcing the Hays Code were often not the most insightful people, right? And so oftentimes, particularly queer filmmakers and actors were able to find ways to get things that would go over the heads of the
Hmm.
right. In fact, there's a really great documentary for folks if they're interested, if you've never seen it, called The Celluloid Closet, based on a book by Vito Russo. That's all about the history of kind of gay and lesbian representation in cinema, kind of from the beginning up until about the 1990s, right? Um, and yeah, it kind of looks at ways in which like LGBTQ folks in Hollywood were able to kind of try to get things under the radar of the censors, and that's always fun. And I mean, certainly it being October and everything, and thinking about Halloween, there are lots of great horror movies that fall into that category too. So yeah, plenty of fun stuff to check out this holiday season if you are into spooky LGBTQ plus horror out there. um, okay, well, we are getting close to the end of our
Okay.
discussion here. So I always like to kind of ask my guests, what can you tell us? What kind of sneak peek can you give us about what's coming next? So we have obviously 13 days of monster fucking and 13 days of monsters making love. Coming to you very, very soon. We've got tinsel and tentacles stuff coming this holiday season. What else beyond that can you preview for us here today?
Absolutely. My next goal, once everything is kind of tied up and with a little pretty little bow for
Mhm.
2023, I am going back to the first book I ever published, to Cold Hard Cash, and I am finally going to be finishing that series.
Ooh, exciting. Oh, I bet
Yes.
readers are going to be really, really, really stoked about that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh, wonderful. Well, there's a lot to look forward to coming from you, Kat. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining me here today. And I
Of
will look
course.
forward to seeing you at GRL. And we will be looking forward to meeting readers there as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Until next time, bye.
Bye.